Welcome to Living Outside the Matrix, the show where we examine important ideas either ignored or misrepresented in the mainstream narrative. Hi there, I'm your host, Nigel Howitt, and on the show today, it's a great pleasure to welcome Daniel Roytas from Australia, a nutritionist and a man who is challenging the myth of the need to take supplements and vitamins. So today, really excited to hear all about what Daniel's got to say on that. Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time to join us all the way from down under today, and a warm welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Nigel. It's a pleasure. I've been looking forward to it.
Wicked. I'm really interested in this whole vitamin supplements issue. I've been interested in health for a good few years, and researching everything. And just when you think you've got it all sorted, you find another assumption that you haven't questioned. And this whole thing about do you take supplements? Do you not take supplements? And then vitamins, these things in these little capsules, and you've really helped me to question that one. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this. Where do we start with such a big topic? Is it all about? Well, I'll let you. Maybe you want to give us a little clue first of all, Daniel, in how you got into this, your background, your studying, and so forth. Just leading you into asking, this big question.
Yeah, sure. Up until about a month ago, I was a senior lecturer of nutritional medicine at an Australian university, and that was a role that I'd held since about 2014. I've worked at various colleges and universities across Australia as a senior lecturer and lecturer, and done this for, as I said, many years. Got into it because I had health issues as a young man, and the medical system didn't really help me out, and natural medicine did. So I've had a passion and an interest in that field ever since then. And yeah, up until about a month ago, was just happy working away, lecturing and creating content and giving lectures and things to students. But over the last couple of years, I've really started to question a lot of things that I thought I knew about health and wellness in the human body. I've always questioned things, but prior to 2019, or the end of 2019, didn't really think about it too much, didn't give it that much thought. But certainly since then, I've really taken a deep dive into a lot of different topics. And I found that what we're told is usually not correct. There's usually some inconsistencies with a lot of so-called things proven by science. And I'm not too proud or anything to say that, I'm not going to investigate the field of nutrition because I'm a nutritionist. Like, I wanted to investigate it further. And I thought, well, the best place to start is supplements, because everyone takes them, and we've been led to believe that they're really important for health and that you can only achieve good health if you take supplements. I was certainly guilty of prescribing supplements to my clients over the course of about 10 years in clinical practice. And yeah, I've had a bit of a look into supplements, and what I found was kind of horrifying to me. And we'll probably get into that. The first thing that comes to mind for me is, are the vitamins in pills and supplements the same as what's in food? Because if they're not, then why are we supplementing? I think we're under the assumption that what's in a supplement is what's coming straight from a food, right?
Yeah.
Like, I use vitamin C as a example because people are familiar with it. So prior to 2019, I was of the opinion that vitamin C in a supplement comes from like an orange or a strawberry or a piece of kiwi fruit, where they take the orange, they process it, dehydrate it, powder the orange up, and then you take just the vitamin C out of it. But they actually don't do that at all.
Go on, enlighten us. What horrors do they do?
Well, just for vitamin C, it's made. All vitamins and minerals are synthesized in a laboratory. They are synthetic. They've never seen the inside of a fruit ever, because they're made in a lab. So for vitamin C, for example, the way in which they make that is through this thing called a process called the Reichstein process, and it's about 7 or 8 steps long. And you can actually go to Wikipedia and look up the Reichstein process, and you'll see that what they do is they take genetically modified dextrose, I think it is, from corn, and then expose it to things like acetone or nail polish remover, heavy metals like platinum and aluminium, toxic chemicals like formaldehyde, and sometimes they use bacteria and things to participate in certain metabolic reactions. And they mix all this stuff together in a test tube, precipitate it off, and you're left with this powder. And what they say is that powder is the same chemical structure as the vitamin C that you get in an orange, and therefore it's the same thing. Right?
Right, yeah. So the story goes.
So the story goes. And that's true of any vitamin or mineral supplement, unless it's a whole food supplement. So there are supplements out there where they do take like a berry and they'll dehydrate it down and make it into a powder. That's called a whole food supplement. So it's not actually just the pure vitamin C or ascorbic acid that we get from these sort of supplement products from pharmacies and health food stores and natural therapist clinics. Yeah, so the vitamin C is synthetic, as are all these vitamins and minerals. And many people aren't aware that these supplements aren't actually made by natural medicine companies. They're made by maybe half a dozen pharmaceutical companies around the world. I don't know if I'm going to name names of these companies, but they essentially, if you want to make a natural medicine supplement, a vitamin or mineral supplement, you go to one of these pharmaceutical companies and say, hey, send me a 20 kilogram drum of vitamin C or ascorbic acid. And they'll make it in the lab, put it in a 20 kilogram drum, ship it off to you. And then your company will put it in a capsule, put a nice looking natural medicine label on it, natural health label, and sell it to an unsuspecting customer who thinks they're getting the real deal when they're not. So,
okay.
Yeah, sorry, I hope I'm not going off track here.
No. I mean, that's fascinating, because I mean, most people do assume that, or perhaps I should say, don't assume that they come from a lab. I certainly didn't, and that was one of the things that I was quite horrified about. I mean, it is one of those things that not many people really question and chew over. How do we get the vitamins out of these food stuffs and into this little capsule? And it makes perfect sense, really, that to hear ultimately that they're synthesized in a lab of a pharmaceutical company. No worse than that. I mean, that's quite shocking, isn't it? Because a lot of us have got good reasons to rile against the big pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. So apart from whole food supplements you mentioned there, which are literally the whole foods, it's lab synthesis, is it?
Yep. So they use all sorts of stuff. A lot of these things are made from petrochemical precursors. So they'll take the name of the compound escapes me now. It'll come to me. But yes,
No
they
worries.
are petrochemical derived.
What about things like CoQ10 and coenzymes, ubiquinol, and things like that? Are they? Is the full spectrum of supplements so created in a lab? Just a quick tangent, and if you remember what you were going to say, please chime in and interrupt me. But Dr. Joseph McCullough talks about things like krill oil, in terms of the healthy fats and getting a useful omega 3, I think, from the krill oil. Is there a distinction? Again, maybe I don't want to knock you off course if you're
No, it's fine.
following your thread, but is there a distinction? Are there some supplements that are good and some supplements that are, you know, or some that are less bad, should I say, rather than all of these chemically synthesized ones?
Personally, I don't recommend or prescribe supplements anymore at all to my clients, bar very exceptional circumstances. And the reason for that is because a supplement has been modified, even if it is like a whole food supplement or krill oil or fish oil or something like this, that may have came from an animal, like some cod liver oil came from the liver of a cod, right? Once we extract something from a food, a vegetable, a plant, an animal, its composition changes, and it may not necessarily be that biocompatible with the human body. Oils like fish oil, I mean, you might get away with it, but the best thing is to eat the whole fish.
Yeah.
And certainly minerals and things you have to be really, really careful of, because these are inorganic substances, which means that it is very difficult for the body to recognize them, to absorb them, to metabolize them, and to excrete them.
Yeah.
And they don't work the same way in the human body as vitamins do that are found in fruits and vegetables and animal products.
Yeah.
They work completely differently. But it's sort of, no one really looks at that, because we're told that the chemical structure of the synthetic stuff is the same as the stuff in the food. Therefore, who cares? It doesn't matter.
Right.
Same chemical structure works the same way.
Okay, so bioavailability is another thing to consider separately, completely separate from chemical structure. Identical chemical structure doesn't translate into equal bioavailability. Would that be right?
The way I like to, I have an analogy. So they tell us the only thing to worry about is the chemical structure, because it works in the body a very specific way, and there's receptors on cells that it binds to. And this particular chemical structure, say it's vitamin C, when it binds to a cell, exerts a certain effect, nothing more to it.
Mm-hmm.
So when they look at or try to work out what the chemical structure is of a vitamin, they do it through various processes. But these processes, like gas chromatography and these kinds of things, only look at the substance in one way. So it would be like trying to tell me what the skin of a human being looks like, and you can only look at me using an X-ray. Yeah, you can't do it, because there's other aspects to a human body that an X-ray can't pick up. And this is kind of what they do with these vitamins. They look at it a very specific way. And they go, well, this must be how it works. There are other methods of visualizing vitamins and minerals. There was a book written by, I've forgotten his name now, but he actually went through and did a whole bunch of chromatogram analysis on different vitamins and compared the synthetic forms to the natural forms. And actually the difference in the structure of those substances was completely different.
Wow.
So once we start looking at these synthetic versus natural forms with different methods of analysis, we do start to see vast differences here. A way that I like to use an analogy or explain this is by using an analogy. Imagine you've got two pictures of two identical cars.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's like a Mercedes C-Class. I don't know. I'm just giving an example of a vehicle. They're both black in these pictures. And you say to someone, based upon these pictures, tell me which one's the 4-cylinder and which one's the 6-cylinder. Tell me which one's the automatic, or tell me which one's the manual. Tell me which one's petrol and which one's diesel. You can't tell anyone anything about the car because you're only looking at the outside of it. And that's kind of like what they're doing when they're looking at these chemical structures. They're assuming that the chemical structure is the only thing and there is nothing more to it. And that's certainly not
the case.
There is more to that story.
Yeah.
And sorry, just in addition to that, there have actually been many studies done where they've assessed how synthetic vitamins work in the body compared to natural vitamins. And they do work differently. They are metabolized differently in the body. They have different effects. And actually, these synthetic vitamins, in some instances, have been shown to, I'm not going to say cause issues, but are associated with some adverse effects, which you don't get from food.
Interesting.
And there's various reasons for that.
Right. Gosh. So, yeah, it makes sense to me as a researcher, looking at all sorts of different things over the years and integrating ideas. This concept of bringing things together and the sum being greater than the parts. You see it all over the place, really, and it makes very good sense to my mind that this should have a strong bearing on nutrition and these vitamins and minerals. Maybe you can help us out with distinguishing between vitamins and minerals to those who don't know. I often get confused. But it does make sense that when these vitamins and minerals and substances are all contained within a plant or within the liver of a beast or something like that, that it's going to be different, very different from just sort of selecting literally the raw ingredients and sort of making one up in the lab at home or whatever. That really does ring true, isn't it? In the food, the whole food. The Weston Price Foundation, from the famous dentist Weston A. Price, are at pains to teach, I think, the importance of bioavailability through whole foods as opposed to this breaking it down effect. So that really does ring true in my mind, even without the sort of the proof. It sounds true, dare I say it. Not being very scientific, but
yeah. Just on that point, actually, you reminded me of something. When we're talking about vitamin and mineral supplements here, they are actually not. A lot of people think they fall under the classification of the field of human nutrition, but actually they are not a part of nutrition at all. The only way you can get nutrition is through food. That is the only way. Vitamins and minerals actually have their own classification, and this is a classification. It's called orthomolecular medicine. It is the field of using isolated forms of synthetic supplement or vitamins and minerals as a therapeutic tool. Right. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, like how some or a lot of drugs are made at all, Nigel.
I'm not. Go on, enlighten us, Daniel.
Just like really, I'm not going to get into too much detail here. Let's take aspirin, because everyone knows about aspirin. It actually, the active ingredient of the aspirin is a thing called salicylic acid. And that compound is found in, amongst other herbs, willow bark. So people, through trial and error over hundreds, if not thousands of years, worked out that if you have some pain, you can take willow bark and the pain goes away. So medicine and pharmacology comes along and says, right, what's the one constituent in the willow bark that has this pain alleviating effect? And they do some analysis on it and they find the compound that causes this analgesic effect. They isolate it, put it into a tablet, and it now becomes a drug. So the way they make a drug is they isolate one compound from a plant, herb, fruit, whatever it might be, an animal, and make a drug out of it. So by that very definition, vitamin and mineral supplements are actually classified as drugs, because that is precisely what happens. Supposedly you're meant to take an orange and you take just the vitamin C out of it and you put it in a capsule, that's no different to taking salicylic acid from willow bark. So it's actually a drug therapy. And yeah, people aren't aware that they're medicating themselves with drugs because they're easily accessible, and no one really thinks about whether or not these things could have potential side effects or risks associated with them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Drug therapy, I mean, call it what it is. Absolutely. Isolated, taking one thing out from its full context. It stands to reason that that would change things at the very least, if not cause problems.
Yeah. And it definitely does change the way in which these things work, because they've done experiments. Again, we'll go back to vitamin C. If you have a deficiency in vitamin C, you get scurvy. So it's like the old tales about the sailors on the high seas. They didn't get enough fruit and vegetables, so they got scurvy. Their teeth started to fall out and their skin started to bleed. And that was said to be due to a vitamin C deficiency. What they've found in experiments using just synthetic ascorbic acid, when people with scurvy take that, it doesn't always reverse the scurvy. So there are people who are taking ascorbic acid as a supplement, they don't respond. But when they're given a lemon or a lime, the scurvy goes away in 100% of the cases. So it already, in those experiments where they're showing this, it proves that they're not working in the body the same way, these supplements.
Yeah.
And also, vitamin C is actually a whole compound. It's not one thing. It's got 3 or 4, maybe, depending on the literature you read, maybe up to half a dozen different compounds that make it up.
Mm-hmm.
And one component of that is ascorbic acid. So you could think of vitamin C like an egg. Ascorbic acid would just be the shell.
Right. Yeah.
So you're only getting a very small component of the whole thing. But again, they sell it to us under the premise that all you need is ascorbic acid and we'll make it in a lab for you and you'll be healthy because the soils are depleted of nutrients, right?
Right. I think it's very telling, and it sort of makes me feel very suspicious when I learn that these big pharmaceutical companies are the manufacturers of these chemicals or these drug therapies, because it couldn't be clearer in my mind that these people are not my friends. They don't have my best interest at heart. So knowing that something comes from their manufactured labs, really makes me sort of sit up and listen, as it were, because I don't want to be dealing with these people. I don't agree with what they're doing in other respects, with injected medical treatments, and the whole allopathic effect. We could talk all about that, couldn't we? The idea of treating a symptom with a disease, matching every disease up with symptom, it spills into germ theory. It spills into so many deeply questionable practices that learning that the pharmaceutical companies are behind this, I almost want to just suddenly throw my supplements out like hot potatoes. Do you know what I mean? It's like, get these away from me.
Yeah.
But so I mean, do you think that's would you say to somebody who had a cupboard full, well, you might as well just don't buy any more, just chew through them, or do you see the issue, through the lens that you've looked through over the last period of time you've been studying it? Do you see these things as, just don't need any of that, just don't take it from today, don't take it? How do you, what does your perspective suggest to you on that issue?
If people want to take vitamins and minerals, they can. And it doesn't matter to me if you do or you don't. Much like if people decide to go and get jabbed or not, like it doesn't really have much consequence on my life. But certainly any clients that work with me, I take a food first approach because food is the only way to nourish the body. If people come to me with like a shopping bag full of supplements, some people are spending several $100s a month. Some people are spending $100 a week on supplements. It can be very expensive. I look at that and go, that's a lot of really beautiful organic food you can be buying there, which is actually going to nourish your body better. So that's my approach, is like, if you really want to take them, fine. I don't think it's the way that you're going to heal yourself with these supplements. You can only really do it with food and various other things. And that's sort of my recommendation. But I think it's important for people to understand why food actually does what it does and why it's so effective above and beyond vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, well, please go into that. Yeah.
You mentioned it before, actually, Nigel, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. This is a concept known as synergy. And synergy is, there's a concept within human nutrition called food synergy, or the food matrix. And this is the study of how all the thousands of different chemical compounds inside an orange, a banana, a bean, a mushroom, whatever it might be, how do those things interact together inside your body to be absorbed, utilized, metabolized, excreted effectively? So again, medicine and pharmacology comes along and they say, right, we're going to look at this orange. Tell me what's the thing in the orange that has the effect. Oh, we'll do some analysis. Oh, it's just this thing. It's just the vitamin C. Don't worry about all the 999 other things in it. All of those. So again, if someone comes along like a pharmacologist and they say to us, hey, what's the thing in an orange that has the beneficial effect? All of it together is the thing that has the effect. There is no individual component there which works in the human body harmoniously. This field of synergy is kind of like a fine watch. So if you take your watch off and open up the back of the watch, you'll see, like, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 cogs in the back of it. We can't look at that and go, right, which is the cog that's doing all the work?
Yeah, great analogy.
Work,
yeah.
Right? You need all those cogs for the watch to work. You need the hands. You need the little spring mechanism. You need the band. You need the glass over the top of the watch. You need the whole watch for it to work.
Indeed.
It doesn't work as an individual component. Same thing with fruit or vegetables or a whole food. When I eat something, to get through the first process of metabolism, the body says, right, we need this, and this. Have we got it all here to do the job? Yep, we've got the whole food here. We're good to go. Cool. If you take a supplement, right, we're going to start to metabolize it. We've got step one in the process of 1,000 different chemical processes here that we need all those other things from the orange, but we don't have them. So we can only perform that first step. And then the rest is just left undone.
Snookered, yeah.
That's
a great analogy. Sorry to interrupt you there, Daniel. That's a really good analogy, because it's a massive assumption, isn't it, on the part of researchers, and it's almost understandable. You might think, okay, great, here we've eaten this food. What is it about that food that's caused that? And seeing if you can isolate it. It is understandable in a process of scientific research. But what's really cool is that we've now found out that this synergy thing is important, and it's a hasty assumption to reduce. You could say it comes from the reductionist, sort of philosophy, and take everything down to its constituent parts, the sort of clockwork universe. But we've learned that it really isn't like that, is it? There's a lot more going on with synergy, and we must preserve certain things whole. Maybe some things can be reduced and you can isolate active ingredients, and maybe not even in the realm of food. I'm just saying it's really interesting that we've discovered that a more holistic approach is definitely required in the realm of nutrition, isn't it, for sure?
In simple terms, for me, Mother Nature's got it right. We cannot do better than Mother Nature. Humans think that we can. As soon as we start meddling with things, things get worse, because nature's actually perfect.
Yeah.
It's worked all this out for us. This is why you can't walk up to a magnesium tree and just pull off a thing of magnesium and start chewing on a magnesium leaf, because the body doesn't work like that.
No.
As I said, that there's that whole concept of synergy, which is really important. And if we miss that, then things don't work in the body as they should, and we end up with disease, or we end up with these long-term deficiencies, or we end up with people feeling better on supplements, and then they stop taking them. Oh, now my problems come back, which is just like a drug. It's just suppressing symptoms so you don't notice it. And as soon as you're off your supplement or whatever, oh, I've been off my turmeric for a week now. Oh, the arthritis, because it was never, the arthritis is coming back, because the arthritis was never gone. It was always there. You were just masking the symptoms with these herbs and things. So yeah, these are just a lot of things that people should just think about the next time they reach for a bowl of vitamins or something's off the shelf.
Yeah. What about things like supplements that claim to give us beneficial antioxidants? Everyone's heard about, they're very much branded, aren't they? Antioxidants, very branded as something you need. Even if we don't know what they are, we know that we need them, which sounds kind of crazy. But do you? I mean, this, and then we're looking into the whole subject of nutrition here really as well. Do you think there's any merit coming back to, for example, that krill oil thing we mentioned earlier, and the allegedly astaxanthin that's in that, and that is supposed to be a wonderfully powerful antioxidant, whatever that means. But I mean, I suppose, is it a bit like sort of ashwagandha supplements? I mean, nobody ever got a disease because they didn't have enough ashwagandha in their blood or something, So at what point does it get silly? At what point do we? I know I'm asking multiple questions here, so just pick up on anything you like. But certainly with the antioxidants thing, because we're all sort of conditioned into thinking, good antioxidants, it's almost going to make us reach for the supplement in the false belief that we're reaching for something good. So do you think these these supplements that are perhaps more focused on antioxidants, is this just another dimension of the spin and bullshit? Is it just another illusion?
I think so. Right, because what happens is we've confused our understanding of the human body and health and disease. So we look at things like inflammation or oxidative stress as the problem, but actually it's often, and I want to say it's always the solution to the problem, because the body is only ever trying to maintain homeostasis. The inflammation is not the issue. The oxidative stress is not the issue. When those things are elevated, they are the consequence of something else. They are the result. They are the effect. They are not the cause.
Yeah.
So if we pick them out and go, because inflammation is actually your body's healing response.
Yeah, this is it true that it's nutty to put frozen peas on your ankle when you sprain it, and everyone says, "Oh, quick, get the swelling down," because I can't just from what you're saying there, it makes perfectly good sense. Get out the way and let the body do what it's trying to do. Get rid of the cold peas. Stop trying to. Does it, what's your perspective on this? It does seem nutty to me if the body's trying to, create heat or whatever it's doing around an injured site. It's doing something to try and heal, isn't it?
The body's basically trying to heal. When there's an injury, it goes into an acute phase of healing, and the damaged tissue. So the damaged tissue comes first, and then the damaged tissue releases markers to the immune system, if we even really have such a thing, the tissue releases markers called inflammatory mediators to signal the immune system to say, hey, we're damaged, come and fix us, right? It's the body's repair mechanism. If you get a splinter in your finger, the swelling, the redness, the pain, the tenderness, the immobility in your finger, that's all inflammation. The inflammation is the antidote. It's the treatment for the splinter. So we don't look at that and go, the inflammation caused the splinter. We never do that. The inflammation is never the cause of the problem, nor is the oxidative stress, because in that moment, there will be lots of oxidative stress at that site of the wound because we've got dead and damaged tissue being broken down by the immune system. And that's done through various mechanisms that involve pro-oxidants. And then we've also got tissue remodeling going on. So new tissue being generated, that also generates free radicals and pro-oxidants. But the body's got its own antioxidant and anti-inflammatory mechanisms built in, so that once the problem's dealt with, the body initiates its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant response, and then it switches that healing process off. It's done. Right. But the problem arises when we see chronic inflammation, chronic oxidative stress, which basically just means the tissue never got a chance to heal, and it was chronically being damaged or antagonized by something. So the answer to the question is we have to look at what is the splinter. We have to look at the cause.
Yeah.
What is the thing that's making the tissue inflamed? We deal with that. You don't have to take anti-inflammatories forever because you're just stopping the healing response. You're drawing out the time that your tissue heals. Yeah, you're making yourself sicker potentially for longer. And there's certainly some evidence to show that with like physical injuries, that these analgesic anti-inflammatory drugs and things might actually turn acute injuries and increase the risk of having a chronic injury because you're just in this limbo state of chronic healing.
Yeah. I'm fascinated with this idea of cause and effect getting mixed up. I'm very interested in thinking skills and, logically analyzing things to find this truth. And it seems quite common that cause and effect can be confused, mixed up, even inverted. And this is fascinating with the cause of disease. We are so steeped in the conventional view that microbes, that these little enemies all over the place, trillions of them all around us, surrounded by enemies. I mean, it couldn't be more of a malevolent universe philosophical premise. You're literally about to be attacked by everything around you. It's insane. Of course it's false. So this sort of germ theory model that has us as these vulnerable systems that used to be believed, I think, to be sort of squeaky clean and germ free, didn't they, centuries ago? Obviously, we know differently now with the microbiome. But it seems that the whole thing has been upside down for so long, and out there in the matrix with alleged pandemics and allopathic medicine and all that chronic illness, it's just stuck, isn't it? It's all going in the wrong direction. It's all wrong. It's all based on wrong fundamental assumptions. It's not germ theory. It's more like the body, isn't it? I mean, what you're doing is you're implicitly speaking into terrain theory, aren't you? I suppose, Daniel. Not wishing to put any words in your own mouth. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, the body doesn't cause disease. The body is only ever trying to maintain balance and to return to homeostasis. So actually, when the human body has everything it needs to maintain health, it's happy. It's in a state of homeostasis. When you take something away that it needs, maybe like a nutrient or sunlight or love or water or something like this, the body becomes deficient. And now the body has to try to compensate for that deficiency. So now I get symptoms, but the symptoms are actually the body trying the best it can to maintain balance in a less than ideal situation. Yep. And what we see are symptoms. and we blame those symptoms as the cause. But in fact, they're actually the response or the effect of the underlying causative factor. And this happens all the time. We take some tissue out of a human and look at it under a microscope. And if we see some tissue damage there in the immune system there, we say, oh, it's an autoimmune disease that the body's attacking itself. Or someone's sick and we take a swab of their throat and we see a particular bacteria there and we say, oh, it was the bacteria that caused the issue. We're actually coming and observing these things after the causative event, right?
Brilliant.
And then we try and look at that effect and try and make sense out of what the cause was, and we end up really confused. So, yeah, we are very misinformed and confused about the human body, but there is a more simple way to look at it. And once you understand this, it takes a lot of the confusion and the fear and the uncertainty away about health and wellness and disease. It's actually very simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy, but it's simple. And basically as children, we know what these things are. We are taught these things. But then that all goes out the window, because as we grow older, we're taught that the body's imperfect, the body causes disease. There's imaginary little invisible things out there that come and get you in your sleep, and there's nothing you can do about it. And we forget about those important fundamental concepts that we're all taught as children.
Do you use the phrase terrain theory?
I don't know if it's so much of a theory. I think it's more of like a I'm not sure what the word is.
Yeah, maybe not terrain theory, but the idea, let me just describe it. The idea that it's all about the terrain within the body is the blood. The environment is the blood. So get the blood not polluted, not toxic, carrying the right nutrients. So it's sort the environment out, basically. The terrain is the environment. The gut microbiome or microbiota, I forget which is the right term. All of the body as the terrain needs to be toxic free. We mustn't poison ourselves. That is polluting the terrain. Shitting on your doorstep, or leaving the garbage blowing around the garden, whichever you want to look at it, the equivalent is if we eat shit food, if we eat junk food, if we eat toxic food, we're just polluting our blood and the terrain of our body, instead of actually providing it with the nutrients, not through supplements, as you're wisely showing us, but we've got to make sure we eat the right food. And then the body, as you brilliantly said earlier, it's just always trying to heal itself. That's all it wants to do. Give me the right stuff to build new parts, and don't give me any of that toxic shit. Just keep away from that. And so I suppose that's what I mean when I say a terrain theory, broadly what Andy Kaufman's talking about, and this sort of thing, where it's got nothing to do with catching anything. It's just got to do with give yourself the right building blocks to literally build new parts for your body through proper nutrition. Makes sense to me. And don't pollute it. Don't have any benzene, and don't have any lead, arsenic, and all these other toxic heavy metals or compounds that are in the air and in the furniture and in the paint and in the all over the place, in this insane way we live, where we seem to be so ready to pollute ourselves. But hey, maybe I've got slightly off the track of supplements.
No, that's fine.
But just looking at this cause and effect thing, just bringing this right back to the topic, is that, do you recognize what they call? We could all use different terms, but broadly speaking, the terrain rather than the germs.
Yeah, absolutely. The terrain is basically as you said, the fluids of the body. So it includes the blood, and it includes the interstitial fluid, which is basically all the fluid that surrounds our cells or our tissue. If that fluid that all of our tissue is being bathed in doesn't have the right nutrients, it's deficient in something, you're dehydrated, maybe you're too stressed and you're putting stress hormones in it, into that fluid, maybe you're exposing yourself to some sort of toxin or whatever. When that fluid, and that fluid is essentially the terrain, doesn't have what it needs, then the tissue doesn't get what it needs. So it starts to break down. And then we get a response by the body to protect that tissue, or to break it down and repair the tissue and generate new tissue. So, once that tissue becomes dead or dying, or it's dying, something's got to break it down. So if it's on the outside of the body, the thing that breaks down dead and dying tissue is our microbiome. If it's on the inside of the body, it's the immune system, it's the white blood cells. So this is why you look on if I was to look at my skin under a microscope, I wouldn't see white blood cells on the outside of my skin. They can't exist there. It's not the right environment. So I've got modified white blood cells, which are germs, bacteria, and they just exist on the outside of me, on my skin, in my mouth, my respiratory tract, throughout my entire gut. That's all external to the human body. If something comes in contact with that tissue and it needs to be dealt with, the bacteria will do that. But if you're deficient in something, or you're poisoning yourself over long periods of time, and there's dead and dying tissue there, eventually the body says, right, time for a spring clean. And you get this like bacterial overgrowth, and we call it an infection. And we say, it was the microbes that caused the issue. But in fact, they're actually just the response to the problem.
Yeah. Once again, that inversion of cause and effect, blaming the fireman for causing the fire, whichever analogy or metaphor we use. It's great, isn't it? Isn't it beautiful, though, when we do, as I feel, we're clearly doing these days, we're managing to cut through this bullshit and get a clearer impression of how to look after ourselves. I mean, isn't that a wonderfully empowering thing to do? Because it's always struck me, Daniel, as being really, really self-evidently at the top of the list of my priorities to maintain mind and body, a functional unit. You know what I mean? I want this vehicle to carry on working, and I often struggle at why not many other people share that concern. It's like sort of going out in your car and never bothering to get it serviced, just fucking crash it into here, there, and everywhere. Don't bother about it. But that seems so short-sighted. but this is beautiful when you're uncovering the this myth about vitamins, along with all these other things we're learning about the terrain, not poisoning, what's inflammation in the body's trying to heal itself. I find this such an exciting time. It's so empowering for us all, really, to have no fear whatsoever of pandemics. I mean, it's just nonsense, isn't it? You just don't need to fear being healthy if one is prepared to do what it takes. Forego the chocolate bar, don't eat the pastry and the toxic food. Try and eat the liver and the or whatever it is, that the nutrient dense foods that support health. So can I just ask you one other thing? I know maybe it's a bit cheeky, but are there any exceptions to this supplement thing? Is there anything that you have found in your research where you've thought, well, do you know what? Maybe there is an argument for this being needed. Is there anything that falls into that category at all? We've already touched on antioxidants as not being necessary.
Herbal medicines are a different category.
Okay.
So I would not classify them as a vitamin or mineral supplement. Herbal supplements, they actually come, hopefully, from a plant.
Yeah.
So they've taken like the ginger root and they've ground it up and put it in a capsule. Cool. I'm taking a ginger supplement. I'm getting a ginger plant.
So just to be clear, that's not then a drug because it hasn't been isolated. It's a compound, effectively, of lots of things juxtaposed in their natural way in the plant, and then just, as you say, dried, crushed up, or presented in a holistic, in a whole form. Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if I was talking to someone who was, say, taking turmeric for their arthritis, and they were taking vitamin C to, like, I don't know, improve their skin quality, for example.
Mm-hmm.
if I said to them, would you take that turmeric for your arthritis? If that turmeric wasn't actually turmeric and it never was turmeric, it was actually made in a lab somewhere, would you take it? Oh, no. I want the real turmeric. So then why do you then change your mind when it comes to the vitamin C? Right. So there's kind of this disparity between these vitamins and minerals and then herbal supplements. So yeah, the herbs are in a different category. I think they can be very useful in many circumstances. And quite often what you'll find is that the herbal medicines that we're using, if you can use them fresh, I think it may actually have a better effect than if they're dehydrated and put into a powder. Now, obviously not everyone can get access to these fresh herbs, but I think that may actually be better than the dried stuff. And that's purely because of the water content. So there's been some research to show that it's actually the water within these plants and things that also has some beneficial effects on the human body, which we miss out on when we're taking powdered whole foods and things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you hinting there at structured water, easy water? Is that, yeah, meant to be one of the great benefits of juicing, obviously, and for hydration, eating fruits and vegetables that are, naturally already well hydrated, rather than eating crisps and Pringles and pretzels and all this other junk, which is sucked dry of moisture. Because the water is actually a very useful component, isn't it? And as you said, it can't be there if you're dealing with dried herbs.
Well, the water is us. That is what our tissue is made out of, is structured water.
Yeah.
And we eat fruits and vegetables and these things to replace that lost structured water through urination or defecation or sweating or whatever. So if we're missing out on that and we're taking a pill, then we're never replenishing that lost structured water that is crucial for achieving good health. And there is just one other thing on this as well. The thing that also helps to structure the water within our tissue looks like, and I can't say for certain that it is because there's just not enough evidence there at the moment, but from what's available, the evidence that's available looks like that the sun is very important in the process of structuring water, not just in plants and vegetables and things, but also in human beings.
Yep.
So this then goes to that whole discussion about vitamin D supplements. Because people think, oh, it's the vitamin D that's giving me the beneficial health effect, when in fact it's not. It's actually the infrared light from the sun, which is having the effect. The vitamin D is just the evidence that you were exposed to the sun.
I'm excited that you brought up vitamin D, because it's obviously a really important vitamin that everybody needs more of. We've all heard you've got to get out in the sun to get your vitamin D, or it's available in foods, I believe. Maybe you can enlighten us. And then, of course, we've got it in tablet form as a supplement. Can you? Yeah, let's talk about vitamin D and these three sources and what's valid and what isn't.
Yeah, it's amazing how much money people are wasting on vitamin D. Like, especially in Australia, it's the sunniest continent on the face of the planet. And I think we spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year on something that you can walk out the front door and get for free. But people have become scared of the sun. It's a really bad thing. It's going to kill you. Vitamin D, the whole topic is very complicated. So I'll just use analogies to try and simplify lots of complex things, so that the listeners understand the point I'm trying to get across here. Why did we ever come to the conclusion that vitamin D was the thing that's having the beneficial effect in the body? What happened was there were epidemiological studies that were done, which is basically studies just looking at big population samples of people. And in these experiments or these studies, they looked at the really healthy people and the really sick people, and they found that the healthy people had higher levels of vitamin D and the sick people had low levels of vitamin D. They said, oh, having a low vitamin D must mean or be a contributing factor to disease. So then what they did was they started supplementing people with vitamin D. And it never reversed any disease, and it didn't protect people against getting disease. And what that means is that it's not the vitamin D having the effect, it's the sun.
It's another cause and effect issue, is it?
Yeah, like, and basically what happens is you get exposed to the sun, and as an effect of being exposed to the sun, you have a leftover bit, which is the vitamin D, right? So when you test and your levels are high, all it means is you are getting lots of sun exposure. If you test your vitamin D and it's low, wasn't getting as much sun exposure. So you can't actually supplement with vitamin D to get an effect because it's not the thing having the effect. Have you ever been camping?
Many times.
Have you ever had a fire when you went camping?
Yep.
So when it's really cold and you huddle around the fire, it keeps you warm. And you go to bed, wake up the next morning, and there's just like a pile of ash on the ground where the fire was. Think of the sun like the fire. Think of the ash on the ground as the vitamin D. So the ash on the ground is the evidence that there once was a fire. If I wake up that morning and there's the ash on the ground and I pick it up and put it in a little bottle and put a lid on it, later on that night it starts to get cold again, can I just like sprinkle that ash on the ground and huddle around the ash and expect to stay warm? Of course not.
Yeah.
Because it's not the ash that has the warming effect, it's the fire. So it's the same thing with this whole vitamin D thing. It's actually the sun having the effect, and the vitamin D is just nothing more than a proxy marker,
right,
or an indicator that you've actually spent time out in the sun.
So what about the foods where, allegedly you can get vitamin D from eating Alaskan wild salmon and, whatever else it is that contains vitamin D? So what's going on with that? Is it useful? Sorry, just to be more specific with the question, is that just the evidence that the animal or the fish has been out in the sun and we're eating the evidence that they've been in the sun? So is it irrelevant? Is dietary vitamin D not something we need to concern ourselves with?
It's very tricky because the reason why they think there's vitamin D in food, and look, that compound is there, right? But whether or not it's actually having the mediating effect, the beneficial effect, is up for debate.
Yeah.
I personally think that the vitamin D in food is just evidence that that animal was exposed to sun. Obviously, the more vitamin D it's got in the tissue, the healthier that animal organism probably was, the better its structure of its tissue was. And then we're eating now a healthier food. Is it possible that these substances are just harnessing light? This is another thing that I think about when we're looking at vitamin D. It's simply harnessed light, and then we're consuming that, and it's giving us this structured water that we were talking about before. And we know that like the structure of the water in animals and plants and things increases as you get exposure to as you get exposure to the sun. The amount of vitamin D you supposedly get from food is negligible. It's a very, very, very small amount. We're talking like maybe 10 micrograms per day. It's not a lot that you would get.
May I interject there? Just considering things like Eskimos and peoples who dwell not in the sunshine, but obviously eat if they're eating their healthy fish and stuff like that, as we know Eskimos have done in the past for, ever since, and maintained healthy human life with very little sunshine. I'm not suggesting for a moment that the sunshine isn't beneficial, but maybe I'm just playing a bit of unnecessary devil's advocate. But what's going on there? Would those people be eating sufficient, even with their 10 micrograms per day? Would they be getting something indirect, whether it's light, photons, whatever it is, from the sun via the food? Any thoughts? I don't expect you to be the oracle and know everything here, Daniel.
Look, it's possible. I haven't looked into that specifically, like the Inuits and these kinds of things. But like, if we want to talk, like, how is it that cod liver can have so much vitamin D in it? Like, a cod lives at the bottom of the ocean. Where's the vitamin D? Like, how's it getting? It's not sunning itself all day, like getting like, how does that actually happen? Like, it doesn't make much sense to me.
No.
So I have to look at that with more detail, but I think it's probably less about the vitamin D and more about the interaction with its environment, like that animal's environment with the sun and these kinds of things.
Yeah.
I think it's probably more harnessed light that we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's some fascinating research being done on light and biophotons and structured water. And of course, all of these other things that mainstream allopathic medicine ignores, as it just, chunters on towards the abyss over there. But there are some really exciting things being discovered, aren't they, in the margins of research, where actual thinking people are prepared to put their thinking caps on and ignore the mainstream nonsense, which just anyway, we've kind of covered that bit. Perhaps I could just bring it back to we're
Sorry,
talking.
Nigel, can I just rudely interrupt?
No, please do. Go on, interject. Interjections are great when they go places. Go.
I also wanted to mention, and this sort of skipped my mind when you were asking about the Inuits. There is a train of thought. You know how they say, well, you better get your vitamin D up in summer so it lasts you through the winter.
Yeah, I've heard that.
In really cold countries where there's snow and you have to stay indoors, what is one thing that people relied on for survival for like 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 years, however long you think we've been here for?
Ooh, what is it? Is it salt?
Well, in a really cold climate, what is something that you would need to survive?
Fat, blubber, whale blubber.
Well, yeah, that might help. But
fish,
fire,
of course. Yeah.
Fire. So there's actually a professor called Michael Hamblin at Harvard University, and I heard him on a podcast several years ago talking about the potential for infrared light from a fire to have possibly a similar effect on the human body as sun. Yes. So obviously not the same effect. It's not, you can never replace the sun, but regular exposure to fire may expose your tissue to enough infrared light to have a similar effect.
Yep.
Also, there is some discussion as to whether or not looking at the sun during very cold winter months might actually have a similar effect as well. So it's not maybe necessary to get vitamin D, say, like from exposing your whole body to sun in the summer months, or eating lots of food with vitamin D in it. There may be undiscovered other mechanisms by which we can maintain vitamin D. And when I think about how smart humanity is, and I look at how we evolved alongside fire and our relationship with fire, this is something that a lot of people don't have anymore. Some people may have never even seen a fire in their life. They may never have been around a campfire or something like this. But going back 100 years ago, just about everyone had a fireplace in their house, right?
Yeah.
And now no one's got a fireplace. So we're missing this, and it could be potentially overlooked aspect that's beneficial to maintaining our health through the winter months.
I think you're spot on there, Daniel. I really do think that this is a key thing that we've lost, and looking into the fact, the benefits of infrared. So infrared, we're talking red light therapy, that's a big one, and infrared, this near infrared, as you move into the less visible. This is all the frequencies that come off a fire. If you've got a huge, well, not necessarily huge, but if you've got a large concentration of coals, logs, wood, all glowing there in a fire pit, that's putting off all of the right frequencies that can help structure water. There's something big going on there. So yeah, maybe that is more of a key to it than your whale blubber or eating the right seal fat with, with vitamin D in it. It's just got to do with getting around a fire and keeping warm, isn't it?
And think about what happens when you're near a fire. You just want to sit there and you could look at that fire for hours.
Yeah.
And you look up and you go, oh my God, I've been sitting here for 2.5 hours. I didn't even realize the time went by so quickly. There's a connection there.
There, isn't it?
That we don't understand between us and fire.
Yeah, I mean, that whole, you mentioned camping, the outdoor fire experience, a few people can sit and chat in front of a fire and, time just disappears, as you say. But there's something so primeval, so rewarding about gazing into a fire escape that it really does seem very likely to me that there are enormous benefits. And when you connect to this infrared, all the frequencies that are coming off your home grate fire in the winter, or it used to be until it was ripped out and an electric one was put in, it could be another key component, couldn't it, as to why the whole build-up of chronic disease is another thing we're not getting that we should.
Our ancestors had it right. All the answers that we seek have already been answered. There is nothing that is unanswered. We just need to look at what our ancestors did. Yeah. They weren't all suffering from horrendous prevalence of obesity and cardiovascular disease and depression and cancer and all these things. They were living largely free of disease. And when living close to nature, in harmony with nature, a human being should not have disease. This whole concept of everyone just gets sick and it's genetics and it's just whatever, and we don't know why, is nonsense.
Yeah.
A human being, when they get what they need and they avoid what they don't need, there shouldn't be this chronic disease that we're seeing.
No.
And we have to put the blame on either the human body, we have to put the blame on Mother Nature, something Mother Nature's doing wrong, something the human body's doing wrong, and never anything that humanity's doing wrong. So it's either a bacteria or a virus, or the sun burnt you, or it's global warming, or whatever. It's always nature or the human body doing something wrong. When in fact, if people were to look at the poisons that they're exposed to every day, then I think we're starting to get somewhere, getting towards the bottom of uncovering what's really causing disease in this world.
I think so. I mean, I hear what you're saying when you say our ancestors had it right, and I mean, obviously there was immense poverty and suffering and hardship and slums and goodness knows what in the past, where we didn't have technology, we didn't have washing machines, computers, cars, airplanes. So I don't think, as modern men, we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much, but it's really well worth looking at the lessons of the past, as indeed we are. I mean, there's just all the subjects in this conversation, drawing the best lessons from the past, but also drawing rational thinking, which really blossomed in the Renaissance and enabled industrial living and all of this amazing stuff we include in conversations around the planet. So I'm a very keen fan of looking around, applying rationality all over the place, and we can have modern industrial societies, we can have creature comforts, and we can retain all the wisdom that we seem to have thrown out a bit hastily along the way. And that's why I think this is such an exciting time, and it's brilliant to bring all these coordinates together. And you know, your research is fantastic, because it's another little synergistic piece that gets me excited about the achievability of health. I mean, that's one thing that I get really passionate about, Daniel. I think you do too. I kind of get that from your work. Is if we can impart to people that yes, you can do it. You can be healthy. It's not hard. It does require a certain commitment and an effort hurdle, but all of the know-how, I think, is fast falling into place if it isn't, you know, the main nuts and bolts of it are available already. Don't poison ourselves, and make sure we're adequately nourished. If we did those two things, and maybe avoided some EMFs, you know. So my point is, isn't it fantastic that all of this kind of subject, and what you're telling us, to be free of vitamins and all that expensive vitamin D nonsense, it's really empowering, isn't it? We are coming to a point where we can achieve health confidently long term.
Yeah, it's back to this. It's almost like a game where it's like only I hold the magic prescription pad or the magic supplement or the magic pill to heal you, and you can't get it anywhere else because disease is complicated and we don't know what causes it. And there's only a very select number of people who have been to school for a very long time who know anything about it, and even they don't know very much. But to get better, you have to go to these arbiters of information in white lab coats and prescription pads to get better, when actually the opposite is true. The human body needs a certain spectrum of things in order to thrive and survive. It's like a plant. A plant needs soil, sun, water, other plants, good quality soil, organic decomposing matter. It probably needs to have clean air, you know, just some very basic things. And that's very similar to what a human being needs. So what is it that a human needs? Well, they need food. When it comes to nutrition, there's like a million different diets out there. What do I eat? Eat seasonally, fresh, local. Make sure it hasn't been sprayed with poison. Prepare it yourself if you can with the people that you love. And then consume it and eat it with other people that you love, and have fun while you're eating it and be grateful of the food. And if you do those things, it doesn't matter what you eat. We're all so focused on vegan, all these different diets. It doesn't matter. Eat what you like to eat what you enjoy eating, but make sure it is all of those things that I've mentioned. We need clean water. Our water is not clean. It's contaminated. It needs to, at the very least, you need to filter your water. At very best, get it from a spring somewhere, a natural spring, and then filter it again. Connect yourself to the earth. Put your bare feet, bare skin on the earth. We need to ground. Our body literally works like a battery. If you're not connecting to the earth, that battery doesn't work very well. Things start to go awry after a period of time. We need to have clean air. If we're breathing polluted city air all the time, that's going to be an issue. We need love. We need connection with other people. We need good quality sleep. We need enjoyment and fun and time for ourselves. You know, just some very basic things. And move your body, do a little bit of exercise and physical activity. And once you do those things consistently, then it's very difficult for the body to be in a state of dis-ease. So I say there's only 3 things that can cause disease. There's a deficiency in something. So one of those things I mentioned, not enough good food, not enough water, not enough love, not enough sun, not enough grounding, whatever it might be. A toxicity. So you're poisoned by something, or maybe you got too much water or too much sun. We know these things can be harmful. Or there's a trauma, a physical trauma. I fell off a ladder and broke my leg, or an emotional trauma. My dad told me he didn't love me when I was 5. And now that's manifesting as a physical disease in my 30s and 40s. And that's it. They are the only things that cause disease. So once we realize that, it's very easy for people then, or simple for people then, to start making changes, and they feel empowered about making those changes because they realize that they have access to all of those things. They're not expensive. They're not hard to, like anyone can walk outside in the sun and take their shoes off. Like these things aren't unachievable.
No.
Not out of reach for everybody. That they are easy and accessible. But once we have that knowledge, then we can start to heal ourselves. And that knowledge isn't meant to be like some secret. Everybody knows it. A young child knows it. And healers know it. Doctors, naturopaths, nutritionists, whoever, they know it as well. It's just that we've been led astray off down the garden path, and we've forgotten these things.
Yeah.
And
I think
I was just going to say, the word doctor literally means teacher. So what we are meant to do first and foremost as clinicians is to teach or educate our clients about those simple things, and then they go forward and do the work themselves to start doing as many of those things on a constant or continual basis as possible.
Yeah. I think it's very important for people to be mindful of the need to think in principles. And you just, shared with us your three principles of health, if you like, and all these other things, principles that we need to follow, like getting grounded, not poisoning ourselves, eating organic. All of these various things are general principles to follow. So if you find yourself in the supermarket and it's like, what shall I eat? We can't really choose on a whim, on the spur of the moment. We have to be guided by principles, and I think this is when it's really helpful. Information such as yours and the stuff we're trying to discuss here today. If people can establish a set of broad guiding principles, then you can apply that to everything you buy. You can apply that when you go shopping, or in fact, even if you do go to the supermarket and maybe to a local farmer's market, your principles of, I don't want to poison myself, I need to sustain myself, nourish myself adequately. These principles should be informing every decision, really. But unless you wanted to bounce back on that one, Daniel, I just wanted to go back to, just wanted to bring in something on the subject of minerals versus vitamins. I'm assuming there aren't really any significant mineral supplements, except things like bentonite clay spring to mind. Do you think, with your knowledge of nutrition, minerals, and the needs of the human body, is there an argument that small amounts of something like bentonite clay or other things that contain a vast number of minerals, is there any place for things like that to, they're not exactly being supplements in our diet, of course, but is there a place for these sorts of things to be ingested as well?
Look, bentonite clay may have an effect of binding or chelating things in the gut. So that may be a reason why you would use it. Mineral supplements, I think we have to be really careful with, because they're inorganic. And that means that I would suggest they're not compatible with the human body.
Okay.
So there's some really interesting research. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a medical doctor, I think in the UK or the States. And he's suggesting that Alzheimer's disease is caused by copper toxicity. And in one of the papers that I read published by this doctor, he linked to some studies which showed that when a plant or an animal eats something that has inorganic copper in it, it goes through metabolic processes within that plant or animal and gets converted to an organic form that the body can utilize.
Okay.
If we ingest copper that has not been in a plant or an animal, it's acted upon differently in our body. It bypasses certain metabolic or safety channels in our liver, and it enters our bloodstream. And because the body can't really do a lot with it, it stores it in fatty tissue. And what they're showing is that it gets stored in the brain, in amongst other tissues. And we get this inorganic copper being stored in the brain, and the body wants to get it out. So we now have this response of the body trying to pull out this toxic copper that's accumulating in the brain, and we start to see destruction of brain matter. Oh, we wonder why. I mean, that's just one potential reason why people might get Alzheimer's disease. But it highlights, the reason I brought that up is because it highlights the importance of ingesting organic minerals, not inorganic ones.
That's a really interesting distinction. Thank you for that. That's a really interesting distinction. That's a new one on me as well. And that makes some sense. So minerals, everybody says we need these vast spectrum of trace elements. You need tiny amounts of them for all the various catalytic reasons within our bodies. What do you say about getting those requirements? Are you an advocate of Himalayan mineral salt or Irish Celtic sea salt or any of these other means of ensuring that you get that full spectrum?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do use Himalayan sea salt myself. I recommend Murray River salt. I think that might be even better because it doesn't have aluminium in it, I think. So yes, I do use these salts myself. Do I recommend them from time to time? I think we can get our full mineral profile from food. It's kind of a difficult topic. Like, why do we get these mineral deficiencies in the first place? Right? Because this stuff is in our food. When I'm living in this environment, I'm going about my day-to-day life. Say, like, it's 100 years ago and I'm working the land. And as I work, I sweat and I defecate and I urinate and bits of my skin and stuff fall off and it goes back into the ground. So what I'm losing during that period of time goes back into the ground. The plants and things in that local area absorb that stuff that I've lost. And then if I'm eating locally, if I'm eating seasonally, nature gives that back to me, right?
Yeah.
If I don't eat that way, and I now ship my food from 10,000 kilometers away, I'm now getting a completely different nutritional profile in the food that is not meeting my demands. What I'm losing is not being replaced because I'm eating out of season. I'm eating food that's too far away. I'm eating food that may have been contaminated or poisoned, and now it's altered its nutritional profile. So I think if we look at these principles, these really simple principles, try to eat locally, try to eat fresh, organic. If you can't eat organic, just find a spray-free farm that doesn't spray their food with poison, that's not organically certified because it's cheaper and probably just as good. And I think that will help us to overcome a lot of these mineral deficiencies. But yeah, it's sort of interesting. In Australia, we have a place down in northern New South Wales that is famous for growing oranges. But we don't get our oranges from there. They ship them off overseas and we import oranges from California. So we're getting food that Mother Nature's not putting in the things that Mother Nature's putting in the stuff into the oranges that people need in California. It's not putting it in thinking that that stuff's going to end up in Australia. It's just such a disconnection there. And I think that's one area where we're going wrong. And where we're seeing all these nutrient deficiencies and it's hard to correct them. Like, we're going against Mother Nature.
Yep.
Right.
There does seem to be another area where we're making an assumption, like assuming that you can take the micro ingredient out of the synergistic context when it's in the plant. It's just another assumption, isn't it? Well, why would we assume, or actually not why would we assume, it's quite reasonable to assume that getting food flown in from Kenya might be good. Obviously we all need food, but it's an assumption again, as it's one that's been overlooked, the locality. I like what you're saying about the returning of things to the locality, and it makes sense to eat stuff that's grown where you are. I mean, for so many reasons, whatever the local conditions are that predominate there, climatic and nutritional, the constitution of the soil, everything is what it is there where you live. So that makes sense that you'd source your food from there rather than some other place where the circumstances are different. So thank you for another beautiful little insight. I'm aware that I'm using a lot of your time up here, Daniel. Maybe we can shift it around to your current work, and what you're doing for clients, and where your dreams and aspirations are heading. Maybe we can steer it a little bit that way. Tell us about what you're up to and what you're doing for people.
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned earlier, I recently quit my job, and it's funny because I think I got pressured into basically having to resign because there were complaints made against me that I was basically teaching these things or having these discussions with students, and some students didn't like it and they complained. And they also drew attention to the work I'm doing on my website, which is called Humanley, Humanley. So I've got a podcast and I run webinars and seminars and things there for practitioners and just for the general public if they're interested. But that was some attention was drawn towards that, and I decided to resign because I'm not going to be silenced and forced into submission.
Good for you.
But it's really weird how the universe works, because the very next day, or maybe 2 days later, something fell into my lap that was totally unexpected, that never would have happened if I didn't quit my job. And that's going to involve me basically moving away and all going to plan, having a permaculture farm where I can start putting my hands and feet into the soil and practicing what I preach. So the universe works in mysterious ways, and that's what's going to be happening for me next year. But also continuing to do podcasts and webinars and seminars through Humanley. And also I'm looking at releasing a course early next year, which is just walking people through these basic concepts so that they can understand what the human body needs to thrive and what it doesn't need, and how to remove those things and how to support the body's natural processes of healing and elimination so that they can reverse their own disease. And everyone's going to have a different outcome. Not everyone's going to heal the same way. But I healed myself with these concepts from a so-called incurable disease. It took me 5 years, but I got there. And I want to teach this to other people so that they can be empowered and motivated and inspired to take control of their own health and get their lives back and start enjoying this realm that we're in, rather than having to be worried about their health and being depressed and down all the time. They don't think there's any way out, but actually there is.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's great to empower people and to try and spread that feeling of empowerment. I mean, I was saying earlier, I feel empowered by all this wonderful knowledge that we're uncovering, pushing back the boundaries of the pharmaceutical allopathic model, and liberating people into, yes, I can take responsibility for my own positive health outcomes. It's brilliant. And I guess if you're getting to permaculture as well, if you're getting onto the land and able to enact those principles of the basic stuff of looking after your environment, treating a problem as a challenge, and trying to integrate systems. I love these permaculture principles that get you to kind of look at everything and see things. You don't sort of break everything up. You try and get the whole system to work together, don't you? And any little aspect of the land, you try and turn it into an advantage. It's so exciting. There are the principles that you can apply to life just as equally as land management. That sounds really
I was going to
exciting.
say, sorry, just on that whole permaculture thing, Nigel, just in relation to supplementation.
Yep.
We can think of supplements like if you had a farm and it's a monocrop farm, you're only growing one type of plant, and then I'm supplementing my soil with a petrochemical fertilizer that's rich in nitrogen. Yeah, that's the supplement. From a permaculture perspective, they use manure. They use organic matter from animals. It's the whole thing. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about supplements from a permaculture perspective, do you want to use the petrochemical nitrogen-based one, or do you want to give the whole piece of manure and put it back into the soil? I know which one I'd rather use in a permaculture farm. So it's the same thing with humans and nutrition and supplementation. You want to use the whole plant, or do you just want a isolated constituent put into a pill and sold to you as the panacea?
Yes. Fantastic. Oh, it sounds really exciting. So, course, you're going to be working on a course again in the new year, and carrying on obviously with your podcast. I guess will you be turning that into will your podcast diversify into following your permacultural thing, or will you try and keep that separate?
Not sure yet. May diversify, may like start a whole new thing. I'm not really sure. I did dwell a long time on how bad things were in this world and the downsides of what may or may not happen. But now I'm really just solutions focused. So
Yeah.
rather than dwelling in the what if and the fear, it's more like, what can I do to benefit myself, benefit humanity, improve other people's lives? And yeah, I want to get out of that that whirlwind of fear and asking questions about what if this happens or what if that happens, and living the dream that I want to live and manifesting my own reality. So that's the plan, and that's what I want to help other people achieve as well. Just
Nice
getting connected to themselves and Mother Nature and the earth, and just reclaiming what has always been rightfully ours, this knowledge that was stripped away from us.
Yep.
Bring on the future. I think we're at the start of a golden age here, and it's a really exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. I think so. Do you have any specific challenges for the permacultural setup? You're in Australia. I'm doing permaculture here in the UK in a very sort of temperate climate. I was talking to David Moriello the other day. He's in Arizona, at some high altitude. Do you have any particular climatic or environmental challenges where you are, or do you anticipate it, being relatively free of a specific roadblock?
I don't know yet, because where the farm isn't actually in Australia. It's overseas.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be
Exciting.
relocating.
Wicked. Nice one. Oh, that sounds great.
So I'm not sure what those challenges will bring, but I'm sure there will be many. But that's the beauty of doing those things, is when you overcome those challenges, the next time they come up, they're not a challenge anymore.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Things just become streamlined over time. And it's really just about self-sufficiency for us initially, and then hopefully as time goes by, that we can start to provide good quality produce and food for other people as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a great. I mean, it takes a certain overcoming of fear to step out and make a big change. So, take my hat off to you for that. Sometimes it's difficult to make big changes, but overcoming the fear is such an important component, I think, of successful living these days. We have to be able to assimilate the information. We can't say no, don't tell me any bad news. I think that it's well worth hearing what could happen, reasoning it through, and preparing ourselves accordingly, which is what permaculture is all about, isn't it? It's about, if you live in a drought zone, you create wet areas and you try and get the water to stay within the landscape. So whatever your context, we try. The permaculture's taught me to try and build in resilience. So, I was talking to David Morelia the other day we're talking about solar flares and how that could take out the electric grid. Obviously, there's nothing we could do about that, and there's no point in living in fear about that happening. But to me, that says, well, let's factor energy reliance in whatever forms we can into the landscape and our lifestyles, and that's all we can do. And then just get on and have fun and live your life, and don't worry about the solar flare. But I think the thing that was worth avoiding is a sort of a no, I'm not even going to look at any bad news. I think that can be counterproductive, because I think as thinking men and women, we do need to, be reasonably aware of what can go wrong, what might go wrong, and what we can do to prevent it. And that's the fun, when you've built up this resilient system, lifestyle, landscape, everything. It's bloody good fun, because you've done your homework and you can rest on your laurels, sort of psychologically speaking, thinking, well, I've done what I can. I've done it, and the rest's up to the universe, as you say.
Yeah, it's what I think after this experience, and I've thought about this for a while, there's actually something inside you that is guiding you on the path that should be essentially the path of least resistance. There is a little voice that guides you. It's like, do that, don't do that. And I think everyone knows this, like they've heard it at some point in time, or you get this feeling about, oh, I should do this or I should do that. That's your intuition. That's your gut feeling. And people don't pay enough attention to that. They sort of disconnect from that and go against what it's telling them. And then life gets hard. Yeah. Things don't go the way that they want. Things don't come easy. There's resistance, and people find themselves, in these suboptimal sort of situations. Whereas if you listen to yourself and what that voice is telling you, I think it's easy to have whatever it is that you want. And for me, the only reason I got there, I went through all that like fear stage, and I was down in the dumps. I did a lot of learning, but I got to a point where it's like, I can continue learning about this stuff. It's just going to make me more depressed. And I think I'm at the point now where I know about how corrupt and broken the system is. But it was a necessary thing to go through to get me to the other side, to go, right, now what can I do armed with that knowledge and come through and manifest my dreams? And as I said, I had this thing in my heart for a long time that I should quit my job. And I went against that to the point where I was getting physically ill from working there. And it's the day that I said, right, I'm just going to follow this little voice inside me that's been telling me to quit, the next thing was already lined up, because I'd been manifesting that with my mind for months, if not years. It was already there. The universe had lined it up for me. I was just being resistant. So this is another, not just for like manifesting things like permaculture farms and whatever, but also your own health.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're in that same mindset, you can have the great food and the water and the earthing and the sun exposure and whatever else. But if you haven't worked on the emotional and psychological side of things, you won't be able to heal. So yeah, all multifaceted, all interconnected.
Yeah.
And certainly, very interesting times. I'm looking forward to the future and seeing what it has to offer.
Wicked. Nice one. Me too. Are there any closing comments you'd like to make, Daniel? Did we forget anything blaringly obvious about supplements, vitamins? I think we covered most stuff, but I just wanted to bat the ball to you in case there's something that might occur to you. Oh, we didn't say that. I mean, obviously you can't get everything said, but it's been a great conversation. Anything we've left out, do you think?
There's a lot I would love to continue talking about, but I think we've covered a lot of important ground today.
Yeah.
The take-home message here is just for people to connect back to their food, eat real food, find out where your food comes from, who's growing it, what's it being sprayed with, what are the food miles on it, how long's it been in the back of a truck in cold storage. If you're scared about learning about food because you don't know how to cook, maybe invest some time in some cooking lessons, or watch some shows on YouTube or something about how to prepare basic meals, and take that power back. You are what you eat. And if we just turn a blind eye and we pay attention to the advice that says it doesn't matter what you eat, then we're going to be in a position where humanity's in a state of chronic disease and we never get out of this mess. So the more attention we pay to the food and where it comes from and how it's grown, the more people will demand for better quality food, the healthier the soil will get, the less pesticides we'll use. And I think we'll start to see some big changes from there. So yeah, connecting to your local farmers is important, and building community will really help with that. Yeah, eat real food. That is the take-home message. I really appreciate the opportunity, Nigel.
Nice one. It's been great to have you on the show, Daniel. Maybe you'll come back and join us again, I do hope. So humanley.com is your website. Check out the podcast on there, guys, if you haven't done so already. Do you have another website, or is there anything else you need to? Obviously, I'll put all the links in the show notes.
Yeah, just humanly.com. I did have a YouTube channel and Facebook page, but the censorship is real. So I've just used my website. I also have a Telegram channel, which is t.me/humanly. So if you're on Telegram, come and check me out. But yeah, that's really all my social media and website accounts. Yeah.
Nice one. We'll provide all the links, and thank you so much once again for taking your time this evening. It is for you and it's morning for me. Speaking halfway around the planet, I still think it's amazing. But thank you so much for taking the time to join me, Daniel, and I do hope you'll come back sometime in the future and we can talk some more.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Nigel. I really appreciate the opportunity. It was great chatting with you.
Nice one. Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I do hope you got some value from that. Do check out the website, lawfulrebel.com, and do join me again for another episode of Living Outside the Matrix.
Change you want to see. Be the change you want to see.